Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight we've been watching Heart of Midlothian 1, Celtic 2. It was a hard-fought win in the end, but when we did, I'm joined by Brian Degnan and Laura Bradburn. We will have a look back to the first half, of course we will, but let's have a wee chat about that second half. And I need to ask you the question in terms of character, resilience. The heads could have gone down, but they didn't. We won the game, Laura, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, listen, I'd have loved for us to go out in the second half and put in the exact same performance we did in the first half. That's the way we want to see Celtic play. But at the end of the day, you're away from home at Tynecastle, one of the more nervy, one of the more difficult places to go in the Scottish top flight. So to come away from that, with it having been as nitty-gritty a second half as it was, I can see Celtic teams of the past having crumbled in a situation like that previously. The fact that we didn't tonight says a lot about Ange, and it says a lot about the mentality of these players. So it might not have been the sparkling performance in the second half that we saw in the first half, but it certainly was no less satisfying for it.
Ange is currently up at the Celtic fans. He's beating his chest. He's doing his thing. Brian, it would be, and there are some comments coming through, and we'll bring it up here, it would be easier for us to say, you know what, we ran out of steam. It was a great first half and a poor second half. I don't think it was as simple as that. I mean, Hearts have come out in the second half. And by the way, come out fighting, and we'll talk about that as well, with regards to some of the tackles and some of the over-the-top challenges on our players. But I would prefer to look at the fact that we held on. We won the game.
There was a lot of bright spots in that second half as well. It's interesting because you could actually take the post-match for last week's game against Hibs, change Hibs to Hearts, and it's a very similar result. You're talking about an excellent first half, a bit of drop-off in the second half, then an inspirational debut, and that's kind of what we've had tonight as well. The difference being, and I agree with you, Paul, is the fact that when we were up against it tonight, although they scored an offside goal, they scored, by the way, but we looked so resilient, so strong, so determined to a man that we were not going to lose this game. As you say, the real character, and it's one of those amazing football cliches that we all love, but you can learn, more about your team when you're under pressure than you can when you're winning. And I thought Giamakis, was I thought he was really good second half. I thought he really stood up. I thought he held the ball in. I thought he brought players in. I thought he put himself about. I thought Hatate, again, started to fade a wee bit, which was generally good. And a guy that, again, it's been in cruise control this season, I think, is Cameron Carter-Vickers. I thought excellent at the back again tonight. And what I'm going to say sounds really stupid, but Carol Starfelt's a much better player when he just has to defend. See when he's actually in the last 6 tackles and the pressure's on him, that's the best version of him, I think. My only whatever worry with him is in possession, but I thought again he was solid tonight, put some really good tackles, and it's hard to have too many complaints about the game tonight because I absolutely swept to my side first half, faded a bit in the second half. They came out all sort of full of venom and ready to go, and we rode it. They went for it, and we never hesitated, we never shied. They took the knocks and we kept going and going, and I think that's an example of a team who is destined to be very successful.
Well, you've seen it at half-time. Robbie Nielsen is remonstrating with the officials on the way up the tunnel. He's obviously gone in there and given his team a jag. They've come out and they've responded. You've got to think about that as well, the balance of that. But let's not forget, Maeda, Rogic are both missing. They're on international duty. McGregor, Ideguchi, Kyogo and Turnbull all injured. So we can't forget that. So it's a depleted team. They came out in the first half, Laura, and it was a hugely impressive first half. We're sitting here at half-time, very much like what Brian says, like half-time against Hibs, how many is it going to be? We're going to score 3 or 4 here. But the last 3 games, Hibs, Alloa, Hearts, we've sat at half-time 2-0 up. Second half hasn't quite gone to plan. And Joe Porter comes in and he thinks we're awesome for 35 to 60 minutes in a match and then fall off drastically. Now, I think there's a few reasons for that. The first one that we've said is, listen, you're up against the opposition that come out and they're a different beast in the second half, because Hearts were a different beast in the second half. But also, we could say, you've been playing this football for 6 months now, but not all the players have. We've got 5 new players in this transfer window, 4 of whom are going to be classed as first-team players. So we're supplementing the squad all the time. They then have to come up to speed. O'Reilly goes off. Could have been muscular, by the way, or looked like cramp by the time he went off. So it's going to be hard for them to adapt. And perhaps it will take another month or two before everybody is up to speed with Angie's philosophy and Angie's intensity. Laura, do you think that comes into play?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of pretty rough results coming to mind at the start of the season when we believed in what Ange was trying to do, but it wasn't coming to full fruition, and a major part of that was the lack of fitness amongst the squad. You can see that now it is there for the players who have been with Ange and being trained by Ange for the full season so far. But like you say, we've had an influx of new players during the pre-season, or during the January transfer window, I should say, and that in itself has caused us to maybe go back a couple of months in terms of where the team is at in terms of fitness. So the good thing about it is I don't think we're totally back as far as that's concerned, because at least he's bringing in players who he knows understand what he's trying to do. He's not starting from scratch in terms of trying to teach them the way that he likes to play football. He just needs to get them up to match fitness. So if we see the next 5 or 6 weeks, that we play like that for the first 60 minutes and then just have to do whatever it takes to go over the line for the last half an hour, I'll take that until we're up and running fully. But, based on that performance tonight, I'm just really excited to see where we can get going once we're up to full steam.
Yeah, definitely. As well as the injuries, the injured parties, those players who are missing, and those coming in who have to get up to speed. We've got guys coming back from injury, lengthy layoffs, James A. Forrest, Giakoumakis, of course, and Jota just coming back from injury, Brian. So it seems to be that we just can't get the 11 players all at the same level, all at the same time. And I think that probably plays a part in us dipping out the game a wee bit, maybe the last half hour, sometimes the second half. Do you think that's a fair comment?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably pretty accurate. But again, the good thing about that is that despite that, we're seeing results. Despite that, there's still a real hunger and fight there. And I mentioned that, I think at the start, the pre-match, there's a narrative around us just that we're lightweight, we're not physical enough. I think that's nonsense. I totally disagree with that. And I think you saw it tonight because Hearts were brutal. Some many tackles, again, were a shambles. They were getting away with murder at times, I thought. Parizala, to be fair, but no much better. But we stood up to it. The players took it. O'Reilly never shirked at a tackle. Hatate was putting himself about. Obviously, CCV beat on big physical lads. Starfield loves a tackle. And GG up front was putting it out as much as he was getting it. So I thought we competed physically very well. I thought we played amazing football first half. Second half, yeah, we faded off a bit. One of the things that I was thinking about, and I almost got in an argument with myself during the second half.
That's impressive.
That's impressive, right? And that was like Devlin, just got in an argument with myself. But I think that I was saying, and you've got to make a sub, you've got to make a change now and freshen it up.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was thinking, if you'd have brought on McCarthy and Sorrow earlier, what that would have done was we'd have invariably sat back and started to soak up pressure. Mm-hmm. Whereas at least with O'Reilly and Hatate on, when we did get a chance to counter, and we did counter a few times, we should have scored actually. Forrest should have laid it off earlier at one point. We were more likely to make them think twice. If we'd have put in McCarthy at that stage, and certainly Sorrow, I think that cost us. So I was kind of disputing it. So first I was shouting why we don't make a sub, and I thought actually he's probably right to not make a sub at this stage, especially when we Sorrow decided to go rogue and no bother running into the corner, just go for a cross when there's a couple of minutes left of the game. That was an interesting choice.
It was, yeah, a bit left field, Brian. No, but you're right. There are some comments coming in saying, you know what, McCarthy and Sorrell probably should have came in earlier just to shut the game down. But you are inviting that wave of pressure to continue, and the guys they're playing alongside have already had it maybe for 20 minutes. So I get exactly the two sides of the argument that you were having with yourself there, Brian.
As well, that might have been all right if a Kyogo or Maeda up front, whereas if they win the ball, they can just ping it. We didn't have that tonight. So again, you're having to have players that can get it through to Gigi or the overlapping runs. So I think that's the other reason why he probably didn't make the subs, you know.
I'm just seeing here that Matt O'Reilly's been named man of the match. So last week we give a debut to Hibs, against Hibs rather, to Rio Hatate gets man of the match. This week it's another one of the new signings. And that, for me, is actually pivotal because we can't afford a body in the squad at the moment who's not going to hit the ground running. I'm not expecting everybody that comes in to give us a man of the match performance on their debut, but to get another 2 bodies in the door, and obviously Maeda, it really, really impressed us as well when he came in. I just think it bodes well for the coming season. Now, looking at some of the comments coming in, and please do make your comments. We're 1,500 strong in a live stream here. We're going out on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch and Twitter. I think LinkedIn and Twitch are the kind of like left field choice of the discerning viewer, Brian. Not many people tune in on those platforms, but if you do, get involved. I like to see the logos popping up. Most of you are looking at the stream on Facebook, Twitter and on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, get yourself subscribing to the channel, because the last time I checked, we were 1 away from 16.8 thousand on the subscribers. So by the end of the show, I hope I can update that to 16.8. There we go, 16.8. Whoever just subscribed, thank you very much. It is something that we've got an eye on. It's been a good night all round. We will come to... We'll go back rather to the 2 goals, just in case anyone who's watching didn't watch the half-time analysis show. And we really need to celebrate those 2 finishes. But let's talk about some of the things that happened in the second half. And Brian, you've already touched on it. It's been a subject, a hot topic actually all week. And this is the hammer throwing. Now, people say, oh, come on, stop moaning. Right. Now, at 56 minutes, Hatate is filled by Mackay. It's high, it's on the ankle. 60 minutes, Giacomakis filled by Halkett. And then on 66, Abada filled high and late by Boyce. And then finally, the one that annoyed me the most, the 4th offence, was Haring, who was over the top on Taylor, but then he did the old Naismith thing, didn't he? When Naismith went up to Johnny Hayes on the ground. And it's a horrible thing to see by a professional, because you can't see what they're saying, but they're obviously getting it right up to the opponent, and you think to yourself, that's out of order. But you know what? He didn't get booked for that. What was your thoughts on this issue, Laura, that we've been talking about now for several weeks on the podcast, and it's still continuing? Thankfully, there were no injuries as a result of these tackles that I've highlighted there.
I think the problem is that none of the Hearts players did whatever Jota did to get booked, and that must have been what the problem was. But no, really, I mean, I've said for years as a Celtic supporter, I've said for years on this podcast that up until this point, I'm not interested in getting involved in conspiracy theories or anything like it. And you know, you can say what you like about whether you think it's deliberate. Certainly in the case of the referee that was on the pitch tonight, there's more of a case there than there is with many others. But sometimes you just think, I can't keep trying to convince myself that the referees are just poor when it's as obvious and in your face as it was tonight. The tackles that were going in from some of those Hearts players were yellows, and in the case of Haring, he could have been sent off twice tonight for some of the stuff that he had done, and there was not a chance that any of that was going to happen. They get a penalty awarded to them, they get, you know, all these free kicks against us, they get as few bookings as the referee can muster, they get 6 minutes of injury time. Genuinely, I never usually say this, but they were given every possible opportunity to make sure that that was a 2-each draw tonight, and they were just not good enough to even get it with the amount of opportunities they were given. I never ever sit here and say this, but tonight it was like playing against 12 men.
Well, you know, you don't, Laura, you don't. And, you know, like the contributors on Acsom, you strive for that kind of balance. But it's all, I feel almost like a broken record sometimes. We've won the game, Brian, and I'm saying to myself, why am I complaining? But you need to call these things out. We've got a guy sitting there missing this game. His face is swollen out to here and it's all bruised, and Callum McGregor. But that, for me, it was the worst outcome of the Alloa game. It wasn't the worst challenge in the Alloa game, incidentally. I just think that Ideguchi was very lucky, even though he's injured. And then we see the same again tonight. Some of the challenges were from behind. But as I say, the worst of it is Haring or Haring, and what he did in the tackle and then in the aftermath of the tackle. How could that possibly not be a booking offence when you look at Jota getting booked in the first half, Brian?
I know it's so much inconsistency as well, isn't it? And I know it was brother Beaton that was on the game tonight, but and maybe we should expect that. But I just think that look, there's unconscious bias, right? Everyone has unconscious bias, right? And if you live in Glasgow and you're a football fan, you're going to favour one side over the other unconsciously. I generally don't think the referees intentionally try to cost Celtic points or cost Rangers points or whatever. I generally don't. I think it's too much a conspiracy theory. However, there is an unconscious bias and it will play into decisions because you're human. The other aspect is they're just really poor. And when you're looking at incidents during that game that are so wildly and consistently refereed, you have to question it. Now, I made obviously a joke about Brother Beto on there, but I generally don't think they're like corrupt. I don't. But what they do is they open themselves up for that criticism by making such poor, inconsistent decisions during games. It's baffling. And just the last thing I want to say about refs in general, Don Robertson is the worst culprit for me. He was the one that let the tackle. Remember when Turnbull got absolutely scythed against Dundee United?
Yeah, Butcher.
And against Alloa, when Callum went down.
Yeah.
Now, regardless of what you think of the tackle on Callum, it's the fact it was a head knock and he went down and he never got the game stopped right away. That's dangerously negligent from a human level and a professional level. So there's a lot of work being done. So brilliant we won, which we did, and it was a great result. But you're right to call it out because I think it's important that we need to discuss it because it's a massive point of the game and it is affecting our players.
Yeah, again, we mentioned this other day, Brian. You're trying to bring the best possible talent to the football club. And we've got some talented players at the club just now, and one of them is Jota, but he gets some amount of physical abuse. Now, he may expect it to a degree, but some of the tackles he's received are ridiculous. He's a ball player, and I asked the question the other night there, would it put players off? I don't know. Would it put players off? Frimpong was getting stretchered off, and it all comes down to money at the end of the day. I know that with regards to players and moves, but you don't want the Scottish game, Laura, to gather a reputation, not just amongst its fans, but prospective players coming into this country and into these shores. And because you want to see the best talent possible at Celtic Park. And it is getting to that point with the amount of injuries that we've got. And I don't want it to be a stop-start season. A massive credit has to be given to the squad of players, and particularly to Ange Postecoglou. When you look at the amount of injuries that he's had to put up with, every time it looks as though we're getting a wee run, a couple of other players are on the injury table. And very rarely does Ange come out and call out any other factors, Laura, but he has mentioned that we do need protection.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we do need protection. I have to say, I saw somebody comment it just there, and I do agree. As much as I thought the refereeing performance wasn't up to scratch tonight, and I felt like there was plenty of times that Hearts should have been booked, it was far from the worst refereeing performance I've seen so far. But I still think he could have maybe handed out a few more bookings to Hearts in order to calm down the tackling. The other thing I would say about the injuries, though, is it's a point we've all raised on the show often enough, is we do need to look at ourselves as far as that's concerned, because quite a lot of them have been muscular injuries as well, and whether there's something, something going on behind the scenes as far as the training or the physio or the general way in which the players are being looked after and handled is also something that we need to look at. So there's a combination of things. You just hope that we've seen the last of our bad injuries for the season. Conor, I keep calling him Conor McGregor. He looks like Conor McGregor after what happened against Alloa. But Callum McGregor aside, some of these other injuries were accidental and just bad luck. But we just need to keep battling through. At the end of the day, football is a squad game. We need every member of the squad to play their part, especially if we've got any serious aspirations of winning the title this season. It takes more than just 11 players on a pitch. And just proving that despite the hardships that he's facing this season, despite the runs of bad luck in terms of injuries and certain other things, he is making the best of a bad situation. And you can only wonder, you know, how dominant we might have been if we'd had the full strength of squad and players at full fitness for the majority of the season.
And it will come, and that's something to look forward to as well, Laura. That day will come where everybody's firing on all cylinders, everybody's fit. Bernadette, it's not good for your heart this season. No, you're right. We're all feeling that without a doubt. And there's a few people commenting, what a relief. My God, you've gone to Tynecastle. It's like going up to Pittodrie and winning 2-1. You've got to Tynecastle. You've got the points. You get out there. And I know, you know, you're looking at the other scores at the end of the game. We spoke about it before we came on. A narrow win for Rangers at the top of the league as well. On another night, that might be a draw. And that's what we need to keep in our minds. It doesn't matter if it comes out 2-1, Brian. They've missed a penalty. Yeah, there's a wee bit of fortune there. But at the same time, was their goal offside? I would say yes, it was. So these things, you've got to look at them and say, well, I think over the piece, and we'll talk about the first half, Celtic deserved the victory tonight without a shadow of a doubt. There's not much negativity coming through from the contributors here tonight. There's not much negativity coming through in the comments, but do keep the comments coming in. We have smashed through the 16.8 thousand barrier in terms of the subscription on YouTube. Now, with regards to the penalty, I was looking at that as well, and I thought to myself, you know, that was just when Hearts were coming back into the game, Brian. And it's maybe going back to the point you made about thinking to yourself, should we make us up here? When they hit the post and we're still 2-1 up, I just felt, right, that's your get out of jail card. That's your wake up call. Yet we didn't make any changes at that point, and the performance didn't really change at that point. Is that a concern for you?
Yes and no. I mentioned to you just before we come off there that I was sort of arguing myself about substitutions, and my only concern would have been if we'd have made sub at that point, if we'd have run on McCarthy and Sorrell, I think we'd have sat too deep, and then, you know, that invited even more pressure when Hearts were already galvanised. I think it was the right call to keep our sort of ball players and key passers and O'Reilly and Hatate on the park. But you're right, it's these key decisions. That's why Ange gets paid the big bucks and I'm sitting on my couch watching it on the telly, because, you know, it's these decisions that when you lose your games, because you can guarantee if we'd have lost a goal, we'd have been saying we should have made the subs quicker. So it's fine margins, and that's what it's all about. And it's funny you say about the penalty, because I thought, was it Beaton's handball or was it O'Reilly's? What did he actually give it for? Because Beaton's I don't think was a handball, but O'Reilly's I think was. But I'm not sure what he gave it for. So I was a wee bit confused, but it probably was a penalty. But I think justice was done. I think better team won comfortably. The better team won, I mean. And again, it's a hard place to go, third in the league. We've come away with 3 points, no injuries. And the thing about it is, you hit on it, Paul, we're only going to get better. Mm-hmm. This was Riley's first game after the second game. We've still got a host of injuries to come back. Things are only going to get better. And again, I said it earlier on, there's something really special brewing under Ange.
Definitely. Laura, I'll ask you first, what was the penalty given against? Was it Beaton or was it O'Reilly's handball?
I have to say, not for the first time in my life, it was Andy Walker that confused me, because I thought it was the handball from O'Reilly that it was given for, and then I think Andy Walker was talking about a high boot from Beaton or something like that, which I wasn't sure I agreed with. It definitely, whatever it was given for, it definitely hit off of O'Reilly's hand. So that was my understanding of it.
I just thought you were going to blame Andy Walker. I thought you were just going to stop there and say, I blame Andy Walker. Not for the confusion.
Well, after your admission tonight that he was one of your favourite players, I thought when your camera went, I thought, oh, Paul's had it, he's chucked it, after I slagged off Andy Walker there.
Have I not told you my Andy Walker story for the centenary year, right? So we used to write to players, and by the way, I've got folders and folders of, signed photos and all that kind of stuff. So we used to write to players, my brother and I. And I was like, this young guy coming from Motherwell scoring all the goals, Andy Walker. He scored 32 that season, by the way, right? So I write a letter to him, yeah, you're my favourite player. I think you're brilliant. Can you give me Paul McStay's autograph? Right? So that was my letter that I wrote to him. And he sends me this beautiful signed picture of Andy Walker. And it's in one of the communion frames, the brown ones. And he's written it with gold pen and everything. I've still got it. I should actually, in fact, I tweeted it a wee while back. And then the first time I interviewed him for the Nearly Mocking film, I told him that story because he'd done these football years, 87, 88, the centenary team, and he told that story. And me and my brother and my dad watching this thinking, God almighty, who on earth would write to a player and say, can I get Paul McStay's autograph? Well, that was me. So yes, I was quite fond of Andy, but I thought it was a wee bit harsh you were going to blame him for the penalty of the night. But yeah, it might have been a wake-up call. But the point that came into my mind when Brian was talking about the subs and bringing guys back and strengthening the squad early on in the season, Brian, you know, and just looking at that, and a few times, particularly in Europe, he's looking at that bench and there were no options. So you're crying out for a change up front, but we don't have one. And there's a lot of young, inexperienced players on the bench. I think it's improved, but he's looking at the bench now and he doesn't have the offensive options that he would like. So in a game like tonight, ideally you're looking at Giakoumakis and you're thinking, right, probably take him off now. Your options, Maeda, your options, Kyogo, these guys are going to be options. In fact, they'll start and you'll be... So I think the quality of player that we have on the bench to call upon is going to give us that extra boost in the last half hour, that we're seeing the performance and the energy levels dipping at the moment. So instead of bringing on 2 defensive players, which is now a luxury that we didn't have at the beginning of the season, in Soro and McCarthy, we might bring on a couple of offensive players and it sparks us back into life for the last half hour, potentially. But I am looking forward to having a full complement of players. Now, the Hearts goal, I mean, there was a slight debate in the first half about Celtic's goal. Robbie Nielsen was falling out with everybody on the way up the tunnel. What about the Hearts goal, Brian? Offside for you?
Offside, yeah. I think it was tighter than it initially looked, to be fair, but I think it was offside. Just to be back, just to your point there about the subs, just like in a couple of weeks we were bringing, say, Matt O'Reilly keeps this form up, he gets a bit tired, bring on Rogic.
I know.
Not a bad option coming off the bench.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to look forward to. But yeah, I thought the goal was offside. 2-1, I think, probably, is that a fair reflection of the game? I think you could probably say they were, well, I don't know if they were better second half. I think they matched the second half. I think we won the first half, second half of the draw, so maybe 2-1 is better.
Brian, you look like you're still arguing with yourself right now.
I do this all the time. Sundays when I'm watching the game, I was doing it for viewers. I was making a joke with the guys. I was arguing with myself during the game because every time I come up with a suggestion I should do, I then hit the counter to it.
But do you verbalise this, Brian, or do you just do it in your head? Do you actually say it?
I can't help myself. For Laura had the displeasure of watching the Dundee United match. Watch along with me. And every time she turned around, I was jumping about the couch and so I'm a bit of a nightmare, if I'm honest.
I was going to say, I think Brian should do a solo match coverage one time, just for it, because he could probably hold a conversation himself the way he goes in. It's brilliant.
We'll get the two camera angles. We'll get the tangent cam. Absolutely. I want to bring this up because you mentioned Cameron Carter-Vickers and also Starfelt, obviously, but Sean F. reckons he was excellent tonight. There were a couple of moments where Carter-Vickers mopped it up, but that is what a defensive partnership is all about. I agree with Brian, Laura, when it comes to Starfelt. I think that he's a natural defender, but he's not as natural with the ball at his feet. He still has an issue with the ball on his left foot. His swings, it seems, laboured. We've said that all season. But in terms of your back four with Hart behind you, the back four that started tonight is our strongest back four. Chris Jullien spent 2 games on the bench now. Would you be expecting into the next couple of games for to see any sign of Jullien? Because to be honest with you, I think the next couple of games are going to be as tense as tonight.
The only thing that would make me wonder about seeing Jullien soon is one of the games being against Rangers, obviously, and the other fact of the matter being I'm a little bit kind of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it, don't rock the boat. And Starfelt's one of those ones that, took time to settle down, had an unfortunate injury himself at some part of the season just when he was getting settled, and looks like in the last couple of weeks, especially or since Christmas, he's really settled into his role again, which is good to see. I think it would be harsh on him, to be honest, if he did lose out over the next couple of matches. As much as I'm desperate to see Jullien back, I think Starfelt's done enough to say, no, you've got to come and earn this shirt off me, because Jullien's certainly not going to get it off Carter-Vickers, that's for sure.
I'm going to bring this in as well. David Kelly joins us on the broadcast on a regular basis, David, and thanks for coming in. Have we done our apology? Well, I'm writing it as we speak, David, and I'll tweet it out to Giacomakis. Of course we haven't. He was murder against Alloa, and you can say that. He had a bad game, and he wasn't murder the night. He had a good game tonight. It's not like I was comparing him to the likes of Tony Cascarino or somebody like that.
Andy Walker, eh?
Walker was a goal scorer in his first spell. Anyway, no, David, absolutely, yeah, gave him a hard time after the Alloa game. Absolutely, did have concerns that he was our only striker. But I think tonight, he celebrated with the old hands up at the ears, so that he's been getting a bit of jip, and he's proven people wrong. Brilliant finish, absolutely brilliant. And I think when he's holding the ball up like that and he's getting in about these big rough and tumble centre halves, fair play to you. He's a different option. He's going to be a backup. He's never going to get a game in front of Kyogo and Maeda when they're fit. But he's shown enough tonight to say that he's going to cause problems. But we said at the beginning of the game, we've no other option, and neither does he. He needs to step up to the plate. He did that tonight. I hope he can do it against Rangers as well in a couple of next Wednesday. But the thing is, we criticise Celtic players not because we want to get on their back, just because you want the best for Celtic. And sometimes players don't play that well. And you are reacting right on the full-time whistle. And you're just saying it as you see it. Did he prove us wrong tonight? Absolutely. And I hope he continues to prove us wrong, Giacomakis, because you want to see every signing doing well. We don't want another striker in here that's cost us £2 to £3.5 million that it doesn't work out for, because we've seen enough of them, Brian. All over the last 10, 15 years, the amount of money we've spent on strikers and they're out the door, and it looks as though Ayeti's the next one in line to move out, and we're going to lose money on him. But Giacomakis is part of the squad, and at this moment, he's a massively important part of the squad as well. So thanks for tuning in again and for your support, David. And I'm sure Giacomakis knows that the Celtic fans are behind him. Now, Brian, you're looking chuffed with yourself. We've won the game tonight. We're looking ahead to the next game. Hopefully there's no injuries being sustained this evening. But before we go, we can't leave without talking about Hatate's goal again, just in case anybody who's listening in just now didn't get the half-time show. I thought Hatate in the first half particularly was outstanding. I think we've got a real talent on our hands. And I'm going to say it again, that goal was Naka-esque.
It was an incredible goal. It was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, as I said at the start, I think there's so many aspects of his game I like. I love that when he does the crossfield pass and skips the first man. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, it's funny because he must spot it and quickly take, because he doesn't seem to look up. It's wonderful skill. And I love the way and he's actually a bit like the Callum McGregor does it as well, but it's the way he takes the ball in tight areas and just brings it out. Mm-hmm. He never looks flustered or anything like that, or so far anyway. I think, and I think, what did we get him for? Was it 2 million? 1.5 million?
When you look, the transfer fees for the 3 Japanese signings are something in the region of €5 million. And then you look at Matt O'Reilly, man of the match tonight, £1.5 million. Now we brought in, it's incredible. We brought in 13 to 14.5 each for Ayer and Edward. And that kind of spend, I mean, as I said before, we've spent a lot of money on dud signings over the years, but that kind of spend, I think it's so shrewd, Laura. And again, the markets will never stay like that. You can no longer get a Van Dijk from Dutch football for £2.5 million, because once you've got a couple of nuggets, everybody's all over the market. And I guess that's going to be happening with the markets that we've already tapped into. But for those 4 players, an outlay, let's say £6.5 to £7 million, that's astonishing. That's a great bit of business.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking when you said about the 6 million or whatever it is, 5 million, 6 million, Martin O'Neill had to shell that out for Neil Lennon, John Hartson and Chris Sutton each, and that was 20 years ago, so you'd be expecting to pay at least that individually for the players of the quality that we've pulled in. So for Ange to be able to go out there, spend as shrewdly as he has done for the quality of players that he's brought in, and to shift off 2 players in Ayer and Edouard, who, yes, are worth the money that they were sold for, but certainly weren't going to provide that for Celtic any longer based on their performances. It's just, I think, personally, the way we need to operate going forward. There's plenty of clubs who Ajax is always the one I get slagged off for comparing us to, but I think that's where we should be looking to be. Bring players through the youth academy or from smaller nations, develop them, get them an opportunity on the big stage, make a big profit on them, and just keep doing that over and over, and we will continue to succeed as far as that's concerned. It does seem to be the way that we've been operating in the past decade or so when you look at the quality of some of the players that we've had and being able to sell them on. Van Dijk, Edouard, Ayer being among them, you know, and I think sometimes we just need to accept that, okay, we might not be the final destination for some players, but if we're a destination that becomes well known as being part of a pathway to the top, then I'm happy to be part of that pathway.
Then it gives you the dilemma, I guess, that when everybody is fit, Brian, who is your midfield? Because, you know, we've got two performers last week and this week who have come into the side. And we already had a midfield trio that we were pretty happy with in terms of McGregor and Turnbull and Roderick. So you've got loads of options, and then you ask yourself, who is the best set of players to play, or is it a game-by-game basis with the ever-constant Callum McGregor? Still getting loads of stick for Giakoumakis. Just enjoy the fact that he scored a great wee back heel. Come on now. I don't think he's expecting an apology from Acsom for saying he was poor against Alloa Athletic. He scored a good goal that night as well, incidentally. And hopefully he goes on to score many more wearing the green and white hoops of Celtic. Listen, I love being reminded of everything that I get wrong. That's great, because that tends to mean that Celtic are doing well, and that's all that matters. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. 1,500 live, which is tremendous. We've smashed through 16.8 thousand. And those subscribers should also hit the notification button so you don't miss the Alan Thompson interview this weekend. Alan was in great form. He's doing well. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to him. He's just released a book and we talk all about his football career, not just his Celtic career. And he was on great form. So thanks to everybody for getting involved on the social media channels and on YouTube. Thank you to Brian Degnan and once again Laura Bradburn for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.